Confrontations over the war created a sense of foreboding. But most young people who consider themselves part of the counterculture were still in a state of psychedelic bliss. Music and marijuana would change the world.
We were experimenting with a lot of things back then. We were experimenting with drugs, we were experimenting with relationships, we were experimenting with music. All of a sudden, I'm a guy who can play the guitar pretty well, and it's the 1960s and guitar players are like leading the revolution. So I decide, heck, forget the school stuff, forget this lawyer stuff, forget the semantics, you know, go out there and play a guitar, you know, get a following, start a revolution.
It broke loose in the 60s, accelerated enormously, in large part because of an enormous generation of great size, which swamped the institutions that are supposed to civilize them, because of rock music.
The white counterculture drew inspiration from black music, and black culture underwent a transformation of its own.
Over a period of less than a year, you had people who were calm, respectable, responsible Negroes, all of a sudden militants wearing dashikis with huge afros, taking Swahili class, identifying with the homeland. There is nothing more exhilarating or seductive than a change in consciousness. And in the 1960s, blacks made a transition, especially on the college campus, from being Negroes to being black to being Afro-Americans. When they said, "I'm black and I'm proud," that meant something.
The countercultures, black and white, paid a price for their excesses. In a few years, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and Jim Morrison would be dead, all from drug abuse. But the music soared, offering a utopian vision of a freer, more egalitarian society. Conservatives saw a darker side.
Think that they could change society permanently, and they really believed in the perfection of society and perhaps the perfection of man. And we know over and over again throughout history, utopianism is a very dangerous business. It leads directly to coercion and to violence.
(1968) was the year of the student. There were 7 million enrolled in American colleges, and the mood on campus was unmistakably rebellious.
People cutting class to go off on demonstrations or to march on Washington and so forth. And a general lack of civility and a general disrespect for intellectual activity, which was regarded as they used to say, not relevant.
In the spring of '68, Columbia University in New York became the flashpoint of student revolt. There were 2 demands: end Columbia's affiliation with IDA, a military think tank, and stop construction of a university gym that would replace a park in Harlem. On April 23rd, a crowd of black and white students tore down fences at the construction site, only to be driven back by police. The retreating students decided spontaneously to occupy several campus buildings.
The atmosphere, as far as anything I know, was very peaceable in those occupied buildings. A couple of friends of mine actually got married in their building. Andrea Egan and her husband got married. That's one of the places where women's liberation was born, in those occupied buildings. Just over simple things like women saying, hey, why should we be preparing food?
The lifestyle was communal. Drugs and liquor were banned by popular vote, but food and drink were smuggled in. And as the occupation continued, in between the talk of theory and tactics, there was a lot of playfulness. University President Grayson Kirk was not amused. Our young people in disturbing numbers appear to reject all forms of authority, he said. I know of no time in our history when the gap between the generations has been wider or more potentially dangerous.
When they took over the campus and they put feces in somebody's office and they're throwing people's papers out and they're getting professors, taking their life work and throwing it out on the floor, I wrote a statement for Nixon, and some of the Nixon people were really opposed, and I just denounced the demonstrators 100% at fault, overprivileged kids.
The first thing we did when we got into Kirk's office was hit his files. Besides a bunch of crap in his girly magazines, we found a bunch of papers linking Columbia to the RDA, a whole bunch of shit about putting down SDS, and a lot of letters about cleaning up the area by moving out the blacks and the Puerto Ricans.
After a week, the administration had had enough. They called in the police to clear out all 5 occupied buildings.
We have been informed that the police department will take all the necessary action in connection with our complaint against you.
It was class warfare. 1,000 blue-collar New York cops against some radical Ivy League kids.
Watch it. Okay, get back. Go. Bring them into the door.
Well, I dropped my glasses when I was running. I asked the cop officer, could I please go back? And he whacked me in the face.
I was completely shocked when the police went in and beat up people so badly. Nothing prepared me for that.
Nearly 150 people were injured, more than 700 arrested. But President Kirk was forced to resign, and eventually the students won most of their demands.